Welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. This is a podcast dedicated to educating and empowering women from preconception, pregnancy, birth, and through early motherhood on wellness lifestyle. I'm your host, Dr. Lola Brayton. I'm a chiropractor specializing in maternity and pediatrics, as well as a mother to my beautiful son, Finley, who has hand-selected experts in natural holistic healthcare specialties to shine light on options and choices during this exciting phase of a woman's life. And today's guest was truly an honor to snag. IBU ROBIN LIM. She and I connected 10 years ago when I went on a writer's retreat to Bali. And while I was flying on the airplane from New Jersey to Bali in Indonesia, I happened to meet a woman sitting next to me on the plane who personally knew IBU ROBIN. And when she saw me reading a book about birth, she said, "Oh, are you a midwife?" I said, "No, but I'm very interested in birth and I'm going to Bali to write a book about birth." She said, "Oh, I have to connect you with IBU ROBIN." And I was like, that would be amazing. So I had such an honor and privilege to meet her while I was there and to go to her nonprofit, Bumi Sehat, to witness where women were able to give birth at no cost to them, and also to provide seva, where I was able to give free chiropractic care to people living in the community that were coming for free acupuncture to the clinic. And I had a old chiro table there and I was willing to serve and adjust. So it was awesome. And now here we are 10 years later connecting. And we did have some internet issues as she was doing the recording in Bali, but her message is so passionate, so full of love, so heartwarming. I apologize for some of the disconnect there with the recording, but I know that you're going to really enjoy this episode. So a little bit about IBU ROBIN LIM. She is a Filipino-American midwife, mother and grandmother, and founder of Yayasan Bumi Sehat, a nonprofit organization in Indonesia. Lim also serves on the board of Bumi-Wadah Philippines, where she is known as Lola Robin. Her passion is human rights in childbirth. She believes that each individual is an essential piece of peace. Therefore, by protecting the mothers in childbirth and the newborns, our smallest citizens of Earth, we may build peace one baby, one mother, one family at a time. To learn more about this amazing woman, go to her website at IBU ROBIN, that's IBUROBIN.com. Hello, IBU ROBIN. I'm very excited to have you on my podcast today.
Selamat pagi, Dr. Laura.
So you are in Bali currently, and we made the time difference work. And we're going to talk all things that you're so wise around regarding pregnancy, birth, placenta, doing this work for so many decades as a midwife and at Bumi Sehat. So tell me a little bit about what inspired you to be a birth keeper.
Ooh, that's a long story. My earlier days, I became a teenage mom that's the first part of the story. And you can imagine just having your guru, the love of your life, show up in your life. And I had this fairy tale, beautiful birth at home with gorgeous qualified midwives that I'm still very close friends with. And yeah, it just started me out on really studying about women's health and wellness, because I had this beautiful experience in this incredible daughter who's now 47 years old.
Wow.
And she's here in Bali at the moment. She normally lives in Iowa, but she's a filmmaker. The film Guerrilla Midwife was her creation. For a while, she was teaching at University of Austin, teaching filmmaking. So she's a very creative spirit and my best friend. And I would say for every mother, I don't know how if this was like that for you, but when you have that first child, it's really like you found your guru. That was just so profound that everything that happened, every single minute of every day was a learning experience for me. And it just doesn't get any better than that. And motherhood is tough. And motherhood is,
Yeah.
especially in the United States, where people are so isolated. And, I saw women struggling. I think I struggled less because I was a teenager. I didn't give up a life to have a baby. I didn't have a life yet. Fortunately, I embraced it, and that could have a lot to do with my Filipino mother and my Filipino grandmother, who was a traditional birth attendant, a helot, all through, prior to and through World War II and after World War II, so in impossible conditions in the Philippines, in the mountains. And she really guided me. She was living in Santa Barbara, California when I gave birth the first time, and she encouraged me to have midwives and not go to the hospital. And that was just such an awakening experience. And
So your first birth was in California?
yes, it was. Yeah.
Oh.
Mary Jackson and Debbie Lowry, beautiful midwives. Debbie Lowry now lives in Vermont. Mary Jackson is still in Ojai, California.
Wow.
And they still, we talk. We get on the phone, especially Mary and I, and we, have an opportunity to communicate. When my daughter was pregnant in California, it was Mary that did prenatal care for her. Then I came for the birth. So,
oh, wow.
How did I become a birth keeper? It started very early. So yes, I really got in touch with how isolating, lonely, and difficult being a mother was for so many women. And I felt like,
because of your own experience?
because of my own really good experience.
Oh.
And, I did notice that women around me were not enjoying motherhood the way I was. And it's not that I had a great marriage or anything. I mean, that marriage eventually ended. I got 2 beautiful children out of it, and we're still dear friends. But, there was a time in my life, it was a real roller coaster in my marriage. And financially, I was incredibly poor and still a student. And my daughter always says she went to college twice because she went in my belly and she went in a front pack, literally on a bicycle, riding to school. So, and then she went again when she was a young adult. But I feel like the birth experience I had was so special. And because of that, I really decided to look into why protecting birth was important. And when Ginny Parvati came out and said, she's somebody I really admired during her short lifetime, when she came out and said that healing birth heals Mother Earth. And I started seeing the American Academy of Pre and Perinatal Psychology, the APA research on how that first experience of coming into the world, so we know that pregnancy, gestation, and the actual birth and the first hour or two of life have such a profound effect on how that human being is going to feel in their heart and in their soul for their lifetime from the get-go. And that's not to say that babies born by belly birth are going to have a harder time. It's just that if we can protect their capacity to love and trust from the birth, we're just so much more ahead, because I do believe people are 100% repairable. I mean, my grandson Bear had a absolutely necessary life-saving belly birth or cesarean. And he's a great kid and he's brilliant. And breastfeeding, the startup was more difficult. It was my daughter's first baby. And my daughter has a PhD in reproductive health, and she's a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. So she never imagined that her placenta would erupt. But we're in the time of climate crisis. And those fires in California, she was living in Santa Rosa, where so many, up to a third in some areas of the homes and businesses burned. And what burned with them was all that plastic, and it went into the groundwater. And what the maternity nurses, the OBs, and the midwives were telling me in the Santa Rosa area after my daughter had an emergency belly birth or cesarean is that the placentas have been abrupting, and that they don't know exactly. They're doing studies on it now. Why would the fires affect the placenta's ability to stay adhered to the inside of the mother's uterine wall until the baby was actually born? but it seems to have an effect. And we do think it's microplastics in the groundwater. I know that so many people said the same thing that I experienced when I got to Santa Rosa. Every time I washed my hair, it would fall out in handfuls. And my daughter said, yes, that's what's happening with her patients. My daughter's chiropractor, Stephanie, was having the same experience in her pregnancy. It seemed to be something that empirically, before the research has been finished, we have seen that there has been effect of those climate crisis driven fires on pregnancy.
And therefore birth as well.
Yes, of course. And I just want to say for a moment something that people forget to say, and that is to the mothers who had belly births, cesarean births. I want to say thank you, because it doesn't matter what the situation was or what happened that led to you having your baby by the belly instead of through your vagina. You went the distance for your baby, and people forget to say thank you. And sometimes in the time when we're all really looking at wellness and focusing on natural childbirth, we forget that sometimes birth doesn't unfold naturally. So you didn't fail, you didn't do something wrong, and you need to be thanked. And I know there are a lot of mothers out there that nobody thanked them. So I want to be there to say thank you to you, and to encourage you to find a healthcare provider for your next baby, to do a trial of labor after cesarean, and to have a vaginal birth after cesarean, a VBAC, because it's not always possible, but it's definitely a probability. And with the right support, you have a good chance at it. And my daughter did an incredible VBAC, and after her emergency necessary cesarean birth. I don't like to call them cesarean sections because they're birth. Somebody got bored. It's a miracle.
They are births. And to your point, they're not anything to be ashamed of. I've had women that have felt that from different cultures. And, sometimes that's the way the baby is meant to come into the world.
Mm-hmm. I do feel that my grandson Bear has a special sensitivity because of it. And his sister was a VBAC, and during the COVID 2020, and so we were really blessed that my daughter didn't need to go to the hospital, because at that time we had moved her to Austin, Texas. There were only 3 flights out of Bali, and in all those, I don't know, 2 years or plus, there were 3 flights out of Bali, and I was able to jump on one to get there to be my daughter's midwife. So that was
wow.
Cool. And my daughter did all the beautiful wellness stuff. She's being a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. She got plenty of acupuncture from her colleagues. She has a dear friend that's a chiropractor. She ate beautifully, really a well-rounded diet, including all of the food groups. And she walked and she swam, and she was fortunate and privileged to be able to have those opportunities prior to her first birth and her second birth. So her belly birth, and then her VBAC, her vaginal birth after cesarean.
The VBAC, yeah. So in a lot of it, like you mentioned, for a woman to have a VBAC, she has to have a supportive provider. She has to take, ideally care of her health with her diet, exercise, and then also at least 2 years between the pregnancies, right?
We aim for 2 years. My daughter was just 2 years. She had a baby in July, and then a baby in July. So, it was just 2 years. And one of the things I feel like a mother needs, and this could be one of the most difficult things to get in some settings, and that is a circle of support that believes in her. And I love that concept that some of the poorest women in the world, for example, I met women in Bangladesh who had the tiniest little gold chain. And it was the one thing that they were given in childhood that was always theirs. And every single link in that chain is important because the chain's only as strong as the weakest link. And so each of us that knows a mother who's expecting a baby can be a, excuse me, sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you. Can be a strong link in her circle of support, in her golden chain of support. You know, she might have her mother in love, her partner, and her midwife, her OBGYN backup, her chiropractor, her friend who's an acupuncturist, that all of, and a doula. If she can get a doula, I tell you, I'm seeing such a beautiful wave of improving the circle of support with doulas. So, and many insurance companies in the US will cover doula care. You know why? They found out that statistically there are less cesarean births when you have a doula. And the insurance company doesn't want to have to pay for a cesarean birth. They'd rather pay your doula. So isn't that interesting?
Well, it's a lot cheaper.
Oh, way cheaper. Yeah, way cheaper. So I'm hoping that more and more women have access to all of these things, because why does the United States of America have a growing maternal mortality rate since 1986? And I believe it's access to care. Women of color, Black women, 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women. First Nations, Pacific Island women are having similar issues. So my sister, I lost her when she was pregnant with her 3rd baby in the 3rd trimester. And she was living in Alabama, statistically one of the worst states to be pregnant in. And particularly a woman of color. She was not a skinny woman either. Like many Pacific Island women, she carried a lot of weight. And I don't feel that her doctor paid attention. And the record shows she had extreme hypertension. It came on suddenly. And when she went to her OBGYN, he said that it would be fine. He didn't even really pay attention to her hypertension because the nurse took her blood pressure outside of his office, which used to be kind of standard. Now, our midwives at Bumi Sehat always make sure they are there taking the blood pressure. There isn't a midwife or a nurse outside in the waiting area taking women's blood pressure and writing it on her chart, because this doctor apparently didn't look at my daughter's chart very carefully. And so he sent her after a 5-minute visit when she had extreme hypertension. She had a swollen face, she had blurry vision, swollen hands and feet, all of the preeclampsia warning signs. And he sent her home and said, I'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Everything's fine. And so losing my sister was probably the most profound sorrow a human can have. My mother's 91 now, and she lives with us here for the last 7 years. We're really blessed. And I feel like my mom really suffered something that the unimaginable sorrow of losing a daughter. She really suffered, and it shortened my father's life. So the profound effect
And the baby passed as well?
Yeah. So I lost my niece, I lost my sister. And we as a family really had to deal with that each in our own way. And my way was to look at my life and ask myself, am I living every single day for love? And the answer was, at that time, not every day and not all the time and not every minute. And I loved being a school teacher. I was poet in the schools for Maui County, Hawaii. I was growing most of our food. I was milking goats. My children were having a magical childhood. But I wasn't living every single day for love. And that's when the calling to answer your question, the calling to be a birth keeper that started when I became a teenage mom really came to me. And
so how old were you when you became a midwife?
36.
Oh, wow.
That's when I sat for my North American Registry of Midwives exam. Before that, I was living in Bali and I was being called to births. And I had not finished my apprenticeship with the midwives in Hawaii. I hadn't really even gotten going. But what a kind of crazy thing happened. Here I was on this journey to become a midwife. And then I was in Bali suddenly, and I was actually teaching here. And I had my fifth baby at home. All my children were born at home. And the families here took really great care of us. I had 42 days of very traditional Bali Hindu Dharma postpartum care. And after that 42 days, people started coming and saying, well, you had your baby at home and we need help because we're across the river and we have a woman in labor and we need your help. And I hadn't finished my apprenticeship. I hadn't sat for my exams yet. And I don't know how they figured it out, but they hijacked my life. So I would go across the river and there would be a traditional birth attendant there. And they would say, we're concerned about this mother. And then I wrote to my friends who are midwives in the US. And I said, what do I do? And my first book after the baby's birth was out. Celestial Arts 10-Speed Press had released it. And so I was already getting to be known as a birth keeper in the postpartum sense. But I didn't know how I could get the skills I needed. So the advice of June Whitson, who's an incredible midwife, who she was one of the midwives in Call the Midwife, a British midwife. She advised me really, really beautifully to just go to the hospital and volunteer. And the midwives in Hawaii who had been training me said the same thing. Tina Garzero, Jan Francisco, they said, go to the hospital and volunteer and you'll see everything. And I was a little scared to do that, but I showed up at the hospital and the advice of OBGYNs who had befriended me, Dr. Ines Susante, who did the study for UNICEF in Bali that showed that the leading cause of death in the mid-'80s was hemorrhage after childbirth in Bali, Indonesia, the leading cause of adult death. So I showed up at the hospital and they said, yeah, we need help. Just wear a nurse's uniform. And so I was given a nurse's uniform and I should see if I have that thing around here. It was such an adorable uniform. It was really adorable. And they would I would sometimes get a call saying, we need help. And I would get on a motorcycle with my husband in the rain with my baby between us with a tarp over my baby and me. And we get to the hospital in Denpasar, which was an hour away. By motorcycle, it's a little faster, in the pouring rain. And they'd give my husband and my baby a room. And they'd say, if he needs to breastfeed, just come on into the delivery room. And there I would be in high-risk delivery, being put to use. And so
wow,
my life was hijacked. I really didn't think I wanted to be a midwife. I really prefer to sleep all night. I've hardly had last night was good. I had a good night's sleep, but the 2 nights prior to that, I did not. So I work with an amazing team.
Yeah, being a midwife is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not. It's not. I feel like being in medicine in any of the branches. I mean, you know how probably last night I was my son. Oh, sorry. Last night, my husband and I were comped a beautiful dinner at a beautiful restaurant called Room for Dessert, a restaurant that we could never afford to go to. And the staff there had asked. They called Bumi Sehat and they asked if I would come, and there I was at dinner with my husband, answering messages on my hand phone from a pregnant mother who had some pretty profound symptoms of preeclampsia, and I was able to get 2 of our midwives to go out to her house, and they took care of her and really helped her settle in. It turned out that her vitals are okay, her baby's okay. And so she had a restful night, but we're monitoring her very closely. So that probably happens to you where you finally get a dinner date with your partner or get a day off, and you're on your hand phone with a patient. Yeah.
It happens. I mean, at least I don't have people, that need me in the middle of the night giving birth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And babies like to come in the middle of the night, right?
They do. They like, I feel like the first 2 days, the first 3 days after the full moon and around the new moon, they do. And it's interesting. They come in batches. Like we might have 24 hours where there's not a baby born at Bumi Sehat, and we're kind of going, what's going on? And then everyone's bracing themselves for a tsunami of babies because that's how it happened.
So talk to me about Bumi Sehat, what you're doing there. Over 500 babies are born every year there?
Well, close to 500 at Bumi Sehat in Bali. But last year it was 800, I believe 831 spread out over our 6 locations in Indonesia and Philippines. Yeah, in the Philippines, the location we have, it's 2 hectares of beautiful land with fruit trees and gardens. They even have a fish pond there so that they can feed women some good protein and share fish. That's an area very, very poor that actually the land was given to us by the indigenous mothers because the people really, really needed a Bumi Sehat project. We have outside of Tanzania, we have the second highest teen pregnancy rate in the world in that area of the Philippines. So we have,
wow,
we have 13-year-old mothers there, and and giving them a really healthy experience, and then helping them have access to family planning and access to knowledge, because how heartbreaking is it when a teenager doesn't even know how she got pregnant?
Wow.
Yeah, it's really profoundly sad. And we know this became a problem all over the world when schools closed. Schools got shut down for the COVID pandemic. Wasn't that interesting? It's like we were all in this giant storm and we were all in our little isolated boats, but we were on the same stormy sea. It was
weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very weird. And our midwives and our doctors and our nurses and our lab tech, all of us on the medical team at Bumi Sehat were busier than ever, whereas everyone else was out of work because tourism shut down in Bali.
Right.
And that's the bread and butter here. So we not only did we have to do more, more medical care under incredible conditions. I mean, you can imagine delivering babies with masks and a plastic shield and a hazmat suit and a hair net and, double gloves and things over your feet, these special booty things. And, you would be sweating under all this plastic, and there was no way you could even, scratch the sweat running down your legs. It was really, but it was still so rewarding. The mothers were so brave and so beautiful. So I felt honored to be part of that.
In the US, these poor women were forced to wear masks while they were laboring in the hospital. And for a bit, their husbands weren't allowed in the delivery room.
Yes.
It was very, very strange.
And my daughter made the decision that she would have her vaginal birth after cesarean at home with me. We had another friend, Cassandra Jaw, who's an incredible midwife. So she to come, and Cassandra wore a mask during my daughter's labor, and I felt bad for her, and she said she felt like she just needed to do that to protect my daughter and the baby, and so she wore a beautiful mask. I'd made her one with a batik mask, but yeah, it was very difficult for mothers to have to face labor and childbirth alone.
Right.
I heard stories of doulas helping the mothers connect with their husbands who were outside the hospital in a car on a tablet.
Right.
That was horrible.
Yeah.
Fortunately, my daughter was able to have her vaginal birth after cesarean at her sister's home. It was really, it was 2020. We call it the summer of love because we were all there in isolation. No food was being delivered and then sprayed with disinfectant, and then wait until the disinfectant dried and then open. It was really something.
It really was.
It was wild. And mothers were so isolated, and children being not in school. Now, I had a couple mothers in Italy where COVID hit so hard, so fast, and so many died in the beginning. I had mothers from Italy contacting me saying they were losing their minds. And I said, let's just for a minute take it from your child's point of view. What's your child doing right now? And this one particular mother said, my two children are having a ball. They love that they have me here at home. I mean, I taught them to make pasta, and I taught them this, and we shared that. And here we are at home, and we're kind of scared to go out, and they're not in school. And I said, so is this a happy experience for your children? And this mother said, yes, they're happy at home. And I said, okay, let's see if we can resonate with their happiness. And that made all the difference for some mothers. So I started to ask mothers to try to resonate with their child's response to being home on vacation with their mama. And that was a good thing.
Right.
Harder for people in healthcare because we didn't have a vacation. I won't call the pandemic a vacation. That's not fair. But we weren't isolating at home. We were isolating at work. And so those of us who have children, I mean, I was fortunate to be in Bali for sure. But I heard the cry out from nurses and midwives and doctors all over the world it was difficult for their family life and for the teenagers to be out of school. Eventually, we saw the teen pregnancy rate go off the rails.
Wow. And that was all pandemic related.
Schools closing. You can only do so much on the internet before you start getting interested in other things that could get you pregnant or get you sick. So, teenagers had a hard time. There was an increased teenage suicide rate in Bali. And so I used that time to write a book called Pilihan dan Tantangan, Choices and Challenges. And I'm hoping to release it in an English edition. It's a comic book. It's called My Planet Myself in English, but the real title is Choices and Challenges. And what happened is the midwives at Bumi Sehat and I had visited schools, middle schools and high schools before the pandemic for years. We'd go to each school, each classroom, and it was called Ask the Midwife Day. And we'd put a basket in the middle of the room, and we'd buy those gel pens that are purple and turquoise, and we'd pass them out to all of the high school and middle school students. And we'd say, okay, here's a piece of scratch paper. You get to keep that gel pen if you put a question in our basket. And you don't have to put your name on it. In fact, we prefer that you're anonymous. So, 60% or more were teenagers saying, what's an erection? And they knew what an erection was. They were trying to embarrass the midwives. But we're midwives, so we're hard to embarrass.
Right. It's true.
You bring a couple nurses and a couple midwives to a high school classroom, and they start asking us what an erection is. We just get on the chalkboard and draw big erections, and they
right.
So we had them laughing, but seriously, there were questions crumpled up and put in the basket, and we uncrumpled them, and anonymously we answered each question for each classroom. And so many of them were, what do I do if my friend is talking about suicide? And
wow.
They were talking about themselves. And we saved all these questions. We saved every single question. So we had a stack of this question, a stack of that question, and I put them in folders. And then Dr. Dayu and all the midwives at Bumi Sehat, Ibu Navy, Ibu Sudarni, Agnes, all of us, we would, Eka, we would just discuss how can we answer these questions for the kids. We didn't do a survey like I don't know, we had run into at the International Confederation of Midwives Congress here in Bali, we ran into these 4 men from different countries that had done PhD studies about teenagers and what teenagers need, but they didn't ask one teenager. We asked the teenager. We said, ask us your questions. We'll answer them as honestly as we possibly can. And if we don't know the answer, we're going to go find it for you. Because Dr. Google really might not have the right answer. And these young people had so much misinformation from the internet. And so from all of those questions and all of our meetings and all of our, how we spent the time between births and patients during the COVID, I sat down and wrote the narrative for a comic book. And that comic book is so popular. It's downloaded all over Indonesia by teenagers onto their gadgets.
Wow.
After the pandemic, the first high school that asked us to come, Ibu Yos and Ibu Navy went to that high school. They were supposed to do 30 kids. And we found out some things. We found out that girls all over the world and in Indonesia were dropping out of school because they didn't have the money to manage their menstruation. They didn't have them. Thank you. My husband just brought me tea.
Oh.
So they didn't have the money to buy the pembalut, the Kotex pads, the Softex, they call it here, the menstrual pads. And so we did some research and we found a company that was run by Indonesian women, that was a startup, an NGO that we know called Copernic, that is a brilliant, they are half business, half NGO. They help these young people get ready to do their business and they set it up. And then another young woman from France that grew up here, she did the research and she set up a company. So we had these 2 companies in Bali making menstrual underwear.
Oh, yeah.
They're a game changer. Do you use those?
Yes, but only a couple years ago. I was like, where have these been all my life? And even like specifically after giving birth, I was like, this would have been so nice to have.
Exactly. And you know what? A friend of mine discovered, because she's been talking to me about this. I grew up with her. She was my best friend in 6th grade. And her mom stopped going anywhere with them. Her mom wouldn't go out to lunch, wouldn't go out to dinner. And was, oh, no, I don't feel like it. Her mom was incontinent and they didn't know it. They didn't tell them. So my friend Sandy went out and bought her some menstrual underwear. And guess what? She just gave them to her. She didn't say anything. She said, I'm giving you these special underwear because sometimes as we get older, we might not feel comfortable going out because we're worried about leaking. Her mother now goes out to lunch and dinners again. She goes shopping with her daughters. I mean, how beautiful is that?
Beautiful.
So but what we found out is that if we bought menstrual underwear for these young women and for teenagers all over the world, I would suggest that you just buy them in black because they wash them. If they're in beautiful pastel colors, there's going to be stains. And these girls are afraid that someone's going to know that they're on their menstruation. Because in some parts of the world, if you're already menstruating, then it's not really too bad to sexually abuse you. A lot of people in the world who are sexual abusers, they're like a little bit of code of ethics is they won't do it to a young girl who hasn't started her moon yet. I know that's a hard thing to hear, and it's actually sexual abuse here in Bali is very rare. But when you go east to the other islands, it's not that rare. So we made the decision to order from these beautiful women startup companies. And they gave us a great discount and we got donations. Women's Earth Alliance, Earth Company, and beautiful organizations that help us a lot. Every Mother Counts, by the way, is incredible. Direct Relief International, and individual donors who care and helped us. Just beautiful, beautiful individual donors helped us. And they they helped us to pay for these menstrual underwear. So every young woman got 4 pair and a beautiful purple bucket and a sticker that said Datang Bulan Revolusi with a small R and a big E, the menstruation revolution. We don't say menstruation here. You know what we say? Datang Bulan, which means the moon is here. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, my daughters grew up talking about the moon is here, and we always called it resting. So, mamas, whether you're postpartum or whether you're having your monthly, call it resting. You deserve to rest. And anyway, this menstrual underwear revolution with a small R and a big E in evolution, we actually provided the young girls in high school and those in middle school that needed them with a bar of soap in their bucket so they could wash their underwear, and they could have privacy, they could have autonomy, and they didn't have to go out and find money every month to buy these menstrual pads. And
wow, which is not good for the environment either.
Oh, it's 12 billion a year are thrown somewhere. You can't say thrown away in Indonesia alone. And we see them on the coral reefs.
Wow.
We see them in the rivers.
Wow.
It's a nightmare. There's nothing recyclable about them. They are an environmental nightmare.
Right.
So we wrote the book and we informed young people about the environmental impact. And then we made these underwear available to them. Not only did they get a whole bunch of underwear, they got a coupon for a big discount when they buy more, if they can ever afford it. So we wanted young girls, and girls who had had their moon to stop dropping out of school. That was something.
Right. So that's the big picture here is the education, right? They're going to be able to go on and get their education, and it's game changing.
Yes. I mean, in the United States of America and Europe and Japan, when a girl becomes a woman and she starts to have her monthly moon cycles, her family, of course, helps pay for those things. But if a family can barely buy food, a young woman is not going to tell her mother because she doesn't want to burden her. But then I found girls in Eastern Indonesia who were using bits of cardboard and leaves and trying to put them in their underwear. And then here comes the menstrual underwear. It was just a game changer. And there are beautiful organizations making menstrual pads for girls, cloth, rewashable, beautiful. Days for Girls is one of the names of the organizations. But the thing about those in our rainy season is they're hard to dry. And girls also were hiding them and trying to dry them under their beds, so they would get moldy, and they would stay wet. And girls would use them wet because they didn't have anything else. And going to school it can be a nightmare when you're in that situation, when you're that marginalized financially as a family. And so these are women's health issues that I came to after 30 years in women's health. How could I have not noticed that girls were dropping out of school? And it took the...
You hear that in Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, all over Asia. Well, right. I really can only speak for Philippines and Indonesia, but for sure it's a problem here.
Right.
So,
and at the end of the day, that could be... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Laura.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, like in general, if girls aren't having access to menstrual products, that's going to change their ability to get an education, to build businesses, have careers, like, literacy, right? All the things.
Absolutely. And it's something we can think about. And anybody who's interested, anyone listening to this podcast who's interested can contact me and contribute in any way so that I can keep more girls in school. I really am excited about that. And
they can contact you at your website, right? IBURobin.com.
IBURobin.com, but that's more difficult. You can just IBURobin at Bumi-Sehat.org is a good way. If there's a way through the podcast to contact you, I can give you have my WhatsApp number. You can give it to them. I don't mind.
Yeah.
yeah, it's my responsibility to raise money for these beautiful projects. So I don't mind being contacted. And it's, I have to say that for the people that contribute to Bumi Sehat, their experience again and again is, from what they tell me, is it's like medicine for them. It really feeds their soul and their hearts. And so I feel like I have a responsibility, not just to our mothers, babies, our patients. You know, I don't think of the mothers and babies as patients because they're well, but for the most part. But our patients who come in, especially during COVID, but we have sick and injured people. You know, we do general health in some of the clinics. Some of the clinics are specifically just reproductive health. But here in Bali, I have as much a responsibility to our donors as to our patients, because our donors really make it possible to do the work we love. And for them,
Yeah.
it's a kind of medicine. It's a kind of, it's a love medicine. So what we found out when we went back to schools to start Ask the Midwife again after pandemic, when the schools reopened, the first school we went to, our midwives were told there would be 30 kids. 20 of them were going to be girls, 10 were going to be boys. So we prepared 20 menstrual underwear kits with the bucket and the stickers and the 4 pairs of menstrual underwear, the extra pads made out of this beautiful fabric that's a mix of bamboo and cotton. So for heavy days, they could add that to their menstrual underwear. We organized these 20 kits. We had 30 of our books, Choices and Challenges, and we marched off to school. And my teenage daughter's going by. And we marched off to the school. And I wasn't on the team that went that day. And suddenly my phone started blowing up. And it was my midwife sending me pictures and going, oh my gosh, this is too much. It was a Sunday afternoon on their kids' day off, right? And the 30 kids had the news that they were going to get to have, sex education from midwives who were going to tell the truth. And they didn't know they were going to get gifts, but they started talking. And in the few days between them hearing that, it was less than a week from the time they heard they were going to be, their class was going to have this special education for reproductive health. And the Sunday that it happened, 300 kids showed up.
Wow.
Teenagers. They had to move it out of the classroom into the village commons, into the Wantilan. And it was so much fun. And so it became almost a game show where if you asked a question, you got, one of the menstrual kits. Of course, all of the students downloaded right there. Our wonderful website guy, where our website is always a nightmare, but he had uploaded the book, and they were downloading it, and it was like a huge, over 300 teenagers having a party with midwives and nurses. How fun is that?
That's fun.
They crave the information. And hopefully, it was really a big research project and writing project, because we had to honestly answer their questions about everything, including suicide. And I'm very proud of that project.
That's amazing. Can we shift gears a little bit back to birth and placentas and motherly intuition and breastfeeding? What do you want to talk about with that?
Let's see. Well, breastfeeding, I'll say that because of the way that the midwives care for the mothers in birth at Bumi Sehat, we're able to achieve 100% breastfeeding rate. Now, we do know that some mothers are forced to go back to work too soon. And so we provide them with breast pumps if they need them. Mm-hmm. And we really, at Bumi Sehat, women don't have to pay to be there. And their families come and stay with them. And everyone gets their own private recovery room with their own bathroom. And so if their mother-in-law is there, and their mother, and their husband's sister, and her sisters, and her aunties, they can all, we'll give them chikar mats so they can all camp out in that room. And the family support for breastfeeding is really big. But, breastfeeding is especially beautiful learned art. And because infant formula companies are so good at advertising, and there can be challenges. We just had a beautiful mother who had such profound cracked nipples. Oh my goodness. And she persevered. Yeah. And I mean, her husband's Balinese and she's Irish. And I'm telling you, it seems like if you have a drop of Irish blood, you're going to have breastfeeding issues in that first week. I did. My father is half Irish. He was Irish, Swedish, Native American, and my mom being Filipino Pacific Islander. So that drop of Irish blood, well, I think I must have had 2 drops that fell on my chest because I have big breasts. And and my daughter, who's, her father is Chinese, so she's even more Asian than me. She has big Irish boobs, and she's very proud of them. And we both my daughters and I all had very interesting, challenging breastfeeding first weeks. So
that's interesting.
Try to persevere. You need support. Mothers don't fail to breastfeed. They don't. Their support system fails them. And it starts in the hospital. It starts when, people are just overworked in hospitals and you have your baby and there's just not enough care to help you get that baby well on the breast. Even mothers who have very difficult births and that don't have the birth that they planned on or dreamed of, they still do breastfeed with the right support. So let's support our mothers. And that could be that you're the neighbor and you need to make a casserole for her. Begin when she's pregnant and find out what she likes to eat and make a meal for her entire family. And, deliver it at lunchtime and make sure there's enough that they can have lunch and dinner. That's breastfeeding support. That's how
making sure the mother's fed.
Yes. That's how we increase the health and intelligence of the whole world, by making sure that breastfeeding mother has the support she needs so that she can breastfeed. And I'll say it again, mothers don't fail to breastfeed. Their circle of support fails them.
Yeah. It's interesting that you had challenges with breastfeeding because I do feel like, there's this misconception that it's so natural, and especially if you've had a natural birth, like it should be easy. I know I struggled with breastfeeding as well after having a home birth, and it did require a lot of support. Lactation consultants, I had 3 of them, and and also my baby. I'm sorry, what?
You wore them out one by one?
I did. I was like, I need another opinion. And I also, my baby needed cranial work and chiropractic, and he had tongue and lip tie, which is, I don't know, more and more prevalent, at least here in the US, from epigenetic factors. So there's, these moms that have cracked nipples, their baby needs care as well, right? To help them with their biomechanics.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And my daughter too. Both. I mean, my daughters had breastfeeding issues, and the tongue and lip tie thing is difficult because and my daughter made the decision. She had a very tongue and lip tied baby, and I realized she was my 3rd baby, and my first one was very, very challenging to breastfeed the first week, and then it got better and better and better, and thank heaven for my midwives and for my mother, who was told she had to bottle feed, to come to the United States of America as a woman who couldn't imagine bottle feeding, and then be given injections in 1956 so that she wouldn't breastfeed.
Oh my God.
The burden of bottle feeding. And those mothers, I want to say to you out there, if you for whatever reason have to bottle feed, to formula feed, also I want to hug you because it's hard. I mean, we have an adopted daughter, and I was 50 when she was dropped off at our house. And I really don't know how any mother gets up in the middle of the night and makes those bottles. My husband and I, it was a full-on project to feed her properly. And it was hard. It was really hard. And friends contributed mother's milk for her and also buying the infant formula. My husband would come home from the grocery store and he'd have a list and he'd come home with just the infant formula. And I'd say, where's the rest of it? And he said, well, I ran out of money. I'm like, what? And he'd say, well, you know how they lock the cabinets with infant formula in Indonesia? They're in locked glass cases. So you have to pay at the front, go with the person and unlock it, and your baby can get the infant formula. And if you're out of work, which so many people are, and during the pandemic, it was crazy, and you don't have the money to buy the infant formula, but your baby's formula fed, what do? You know, people water it down, the babies get sick, and babies die all over the world. And Indonesia and the Philippines, babies die. It's horrible. Hundreds of thousands a year. So my husband would go there and there would be these fathers pacing in front of the locked cabinets. And he would pay at the front and go get the infant formula for our little girl, Eliana. And the fathers would say, sir, can you help me? And they were so embarrassed. And they'd say, I don't have any work. I don't have any money. And we've been out of infant formula for 2 days and our baby's crying. And he would buy their infant formula. And then,
Wow.
you know, once you do it for one guy, there's other guys, they're waiting and they're trying to get infant formula for their babies and they can't even steal it because the cabinet's locked.
That's why it's locked, or it would be stolen. It's that precious.
Who wouldn't steal for their baby's life? Who wouldn't? I would. Sorry, I'm not trying to encourage stealing, but I would do it to save my child's life. And so he would come home having bought infant formula for 3, 4, or 5 different families. And he would always carry with him Bumi Sehat stickers. And he would give them my card. And he'd say, next pregnancy, which would happen fast because they were not breastfeeding. So they didn't have the lactation amenorrhea. They'd say, next pregnancy, please contact my wife or the midwives at Bumi Sehat and come and have your baby there where you'll get breastfeeding support. So,
wow. So you're saying those families weren't breastfeeding because they just didn't have the proper support. It was hard. And then that was the end.
I always ask, where was your baby born? Oh, this hospital, that hospital. They gave birth in the hospital and the hospitals were giving them infant formula. And they weren't evil. You know, babies would get dehydrated and they'd get febrile. They get a fever. And then they'd say, oh, you have to give a bottle. And then, you know, milk supply and demand, once you give that bottle. So, but we really work with the mothers to keep the babies well hydrated. And some of our midwives are trained in craniosacral. So we love that as a way to help babies to latch well on the breast. But when we, you know, there's also something mothers can Google this called the Thompson method, an Australian midwife. She came up with this method after being a lactation nurse and consultant and midwife for decades. And she saw the mistakes that were being made in getting the baby on the breast for the first feed. And it's very simple. I teach it. Our midwives teach it. It's just very simple, skin to skin. And just how the baby naturally will breathe better, breastfeed better, latch better. Mother will have less pain, less challenges. Please look up the Thompson method. Again, there are videos online on her YouTube. Yeah,
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's all over Australia now. But she's an Australian midwife with, you know, decades, 30 years plus of experience. We are so blessed to have her in the world today.
Yeah.
So breastfeeding, yes, 100%. I so support breastfeeding. And again, I support mothers. And I want to say to mothers, please don't feel guilty or bad. All of us need to try to increase the circle of support around mothers to include breastfeeding support. And breastfeeding begins when you're young. So if you're thinking about breastfeeding, my comic book about teens for boys and girls did talk about breastfeeding because it's about a mindset. But then when you get down to it and you have those first few days when your milk hasn't quite come in and people are telling you just give one bottle and your nipples are getting cracked and they're sore and then you get engorged, all of those things, very difficult time and you need extra support. There's a blog post on my website, which is iburobin.com, IBUROBIN.com, and it's called the Mastitis Survival Guide. And it's just very simple. Anyone can download it for free. And I hope you do. I want everyone to, it's just one little bit of support is to have that. But you need human support. And again, remember the pandemic, we didn't have human support. It was difficult. So, yeah. So breastfeeding, I don't know. Where do you want to go from here? I feel like I can talk.
Do you want to talk about a lotus birth?
Okay, we can talk about it. After giving birth, my children decided not to clamp and cut the umbilical cords for their babies. Not all of them, some of them. And I had been doing lotus births for many couples who chose that. My book, Placenta, the Forgotten Chakra, I'm about to upload the updated version. And it really does talk about all of those things. We have choices. One of the things that we need to make sure happens no matter what, no matter where you give birth, is that they delay the clamping and cutting of your baby's umbilical cord. There is no such thing as cord blood. That's baby blood in the umbilical cord. Please don't sign away your rights to donate your baby's blood. You know, when you call it cord blood and you come to the hospital and there's a 12-page informed consent that you're signing and you're in labor and you just want to get in, you just want to get into your labor room and do your work as a mother having this baby. Somewhere on page 11 or 12, you've initialed a page that says that you're donating your baby's cord blood. Make sure you don't sign. Don't donate your baby's blood. It's not cord blood. It's baby blood. You can't say, oh, my finger blood or my foot blood. It's your blood. And up to a third of it, up to a third of your baby's blood, if it's immediately clamped and cut, will still be in the cord and the placenta. Why does the cord still pulse after the baby's born? Because its job is to push that oxygen-rich, nutrient-rich blood into your baby. And guess what it's full of? Stem cells. Those stem cells are migrating from the placenta through the umbilical cord into your baby. And that time of birth, while you're enjoying the first embrace of life with your baby, most important hug of the universe is the first embrace when your baby is skin to skin on your heart. And that's what doulas protect. That's what midwives and nurses protect, is that first embrace. And while you're enjoying that first embrace, we don't want anyone clamping and cutting your baby's cord. Just leave it. Wait for the white. Please wait for the cord to go white. Now, when you say hot, we decided that we could still feel a bit of a pulse if you really were quiet up to 3 hours after the birth. Not on all cords, but on some umbilical cords. So we decided not to clamp or cut for 3 hours. So the baby's born. Mother is skin to skin, first embrace, that beautiful, incredible oxytocic bath of love moment where the mother is looking at her baby and she looks at her partner and she looks at her baby shyly and she says, looks like you. It's like, what a beautiful moment for a couple. Baby looks like you. And so then the placenta is born and we put the placenta in a stainless steel bowl, and our midwives always have flowers from our garden, and we wash off the flowers and earlier during the labor, and we put them in the placenta bowl. So we're honoring that placenta. Now, the thing about Balinese culture is that we know that placenta isn't just a piece of meat. That placenta is the physical body of your baby's guardian angel. And in so many cultures. I mean, I grew up in the Philippines, and, the Philippines is predominantly Catholic country. And we knew that we had guardian angels. Every single child knew that. And before we went to sleep, we'd thank our guardian angel for the day. And in our nightly prayers, we'd say, protect me through the night and protect my brothers and sisters and my family. And in the morning, we'd say, thank you for protecting us, and let's have a good day together. Because in spirit, we knew our guardian angel was there with us, beside us. But what the Balinese figured out is that the guardian angel actually is a soul that lives in your baby's placenta. So the placenta has a soul. When we know that and we believe it and we honor it, then we're going to treat it quite differently. There isn't a hospital in Indonesia that will throw your placenta away. Not one.
Wow.
You know what would happen to that hospital if you didn't give the family the placenta? Probably they burn it down. Honestly, not one. This is the fourth largest country in the world. What is wrong with the United States that we are not honoring the physical body of our guardian angel? Everyone knows you need to take it home and give it a proper burial. It's not medical waste.
Yeah.
Stop acting like it's something dirty and awful. And I think that goes back to a deep misogyny, because the placenta is born through the vagina, and people are scared of everything that comes in and out of vaginas. So let's honor the beautiful yoni and not think of it as a dirty thing, and that the placenta is dirty. The placenta is not dirty, and the placenta is sacred. So everyone has different ways of honoring their baby's placenta. Remember, Mama, it's not your placenta. That is a genetic twin of your baby. So honor it as the baby's guardian angel's physical body, which dies when the baby's born. So the baby's born, takes first breath, becomes an earth walker, and the placenta goes into spirit and stays with the baby for their entire life and advocates with them when they go to the afterlife. So this is so important. And so, thank you. I'm so excited about this knowledge. It's something I grew up with because I had a very incredible grandmother. And then it was enriched 32 years ago when I moved to Bali. And it was acknowledged that what my grandmother taught me was really the truth. And so much cultural information that I've gathered over the years is in the placenta book, in Placenta, the Forgotten Chakra. And all of us have roots in a culture that, if we go back far enough, we'll find birth keepers in our family. All of you can do that. We'll find beautiful traditions in our family. I don't care what color you are. You have incredible roots. Your ancestors lived their entire lives in a beautiful way so you could be here now. So how we do our pregnancies, how we feed our pregnant women, how we handle the experience of childbirth was such a fulcrum for developing intact capacity to love and trust, no matter how the birth happens. If you have a belly birth, make sure that you get skin-to-skin contact with your baby right after. There are doctors here who are doing lotus cesarean birth. They're not cutting the cord. It's not necessary. And when all the people out there, it's a consumer-driven world. It's all about business. And when the hospitals realize that nobody's going to your hospital unless you do the right thing, unless you do what your mothers and fathers and families are asking for. And not all families have a mother and father. I've done plenty of births with the Bumi Sehat midwives for families with two mothers. And, they need to be acknowledged and included. So I do find that hospitals will listen if there's enough pressure on them. So, ACOG, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, has finally acknowledged the need for delayed cord clamping and cutting because the pediatricians know that it's the right thing. We don't want babies trying to learn breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is something that they've got to do for the first time in this little body. And the mother, if she's a new mom for the first time, is learning too. So for babies to try to latch on and breastfeed when they're supposed to be bright and alert and awake and alive, if they've had their cord clamped and cut immediately, they've lost a third of their blood supply. They're profoundly anemic, and breastfeeding will be sabotaged. So the longer you can wait, and just seeing the scissors and the clamp, the mother's oxytocin levels plummet. There was Michel Odon talked about that in some of his research. And Dr. Odon found that the oxytocin levels of mothers plummet, which means her risk of hemorrhage goes up. So, and I'll tell you a very secret way that works really well. And doulas teach this, and midwives teach this. If you are in the hospital and you give birth, your partner, just kind of remind your partner, just say, oh, before our baby's born, let's wash our hands. So your partner washes his hands, right? Or her hands. And then the baby's born, and the baby's skin to skin with mother. Almost all hospitals do this now, all over the world. But then they immediately skin to skin for a few moments, and then take the baby, clamp and cut the cord, put the baby over, and weigh and measure the baby on a stainless steel tray. Come on. That's like an alien abduction, you know? And then they put a thermometer in the baby's butt, a glass rod with a smooth metal tip up your butt.
Oh.
Yeah, think about that. Remember, I think it was the 80s and the 90s, there was a book called Communion where everyone talked about alien abduction. It was somebody 5 or 6 times my size with a mask on their face, sometimes wearing glasses, would take me and put my body on a stainless steel tray, and they would measure me and weigh my body. And then they would put a glass rod that was almost the length of my arm up my anus at a smooth metal tip. Guess what? That's newborn trauma. I know this is going to podcast. Everybody goes, what is this crazy woman saying? But I don't care. We have to save babies from this newborn trauma. I mean, when my grandson was born by belly birth in that very necessary life-saving cesarean birth, saved his life because the placenta was abrupting and my daughter was hemorrhaging. It saved her life too. And I'm grateful for it. But you know what? They didn't want me to let him breastfeed. I didn't care. I breastfed that baby. I got that baby over my daughter's shoulder onto the breast. He latched on for over 20 minutes. And then the nurse is like yelling at me saying, we have to weigh and measure the baby. We have to weigh and measure the baby. And I'm like, nobody comes out saying weighing and measuring me is more important than my first embrace with my mommy.
Right.
So fine. And then as they were closing my daughter and that was finishing, my daughter said, it's okay. You can take him to be weighed and measured now. So we moved to the nursery. I take off my shirt in the delivery room, full on. Take off my shirt. Old lady boobs sagging. I don't care. This is my grandson, right? He's skin to skin with me. I in my shirt. I'm sure that hospital's still talking about this since 2018. Okay, wrapped in my shirt, skin to skin with me. We go into the nursery. Then they have this amazing thing where you just put the baby down on the warmer table, and it automatically weighs. And then she's getting out the measuring tape, the pediatric nurse, and she's going to measure. I just take it from her. I say, I'm a midwife. I'll measure my grandson. So I measure my grandson. He's 21 inches. Perfect. Then she gets a thermometer and she lifts up his leg and she's about to stick it in his butt. I get that thing out of her hand. It was on our hospital bill. I was like, a glass. She goes, you have no authority. And I said, you're not sticking that in his anus. Welcome to the world. I'm going to stick a glass rod to take your temperature with a smooth metal tip up in your butt. No, that's an alien abduction for sure. That's all it is. That's what that alien abduction trauma, Google it. That's what it is.
I had no idea.
They describe birth in the hospital, modern birth in the hospital. That's all they're describing.
But what you're saying, this trauma is staying with these people, and it's lots of people that are having this trauma as a brand new person on the earth.
Yes, but the thing about people is they're so healable. We're so plastic. We heal our trauma, but why should anyone have to be healed? You know, traditional Chinese medicine, the first time that they see a new patient, they're quietly healing the trauma of having your umbilical cord clamped and cut. That's what those doctors of Chinese medicine do in a very traditional way. Now, we shouldn't have to heal that. We shouldn't damage the most vulnerable newborn citizens of the planet. We shouldn't be damaging them. We should be protecting them. So that's why I say make sure that your birth plan includes midwives and doula, because they will help you. I mean, the doula is not functioning medically at all. She's just functioning as your support person. And the research shows, I mean, Phyllis and Marshall Klaus, who did back in the day when they did the book Mothering the Mother, and the first doula study was over 7,000 births compared with 7,000 births without doulas. And what they found was over 80% of the fathers said that having a doula at his baby's birth, he was able to learn so many tricks of the trade for how to care for his wife that the couples reported improved marital relations after having a doula at their birth. How cool is that? Now, you know, doulas are so effective at reducing the rate of cesarean, even when you have a belly birth or cesarean birth. Having a doula for the journey is so profoundly good at protecting mother, baby, and placenta. So one of the things that, who said this? I know Deborah Pascali-Bonaro says it, but she learned it from someone else, that if doulas were a drug, it would be illegal not to use it.
It's so true. I interviewed an attorney who represents childbirth cases, who wrote a book about how to have a safe birth. And what she realized after looking at 20 years of these cases where birth went really wrong, there was not a single doula at any of those births.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. 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 And not everyone has access, again, to doulas. So finding those ways of gaining access. I mean, in the Midwest, there's an army now of Black women who are doulas that are providing access to women who are most vulnerable for maternal mortality in our country. So, yeah, it's so hard that our culture has degraded to the point where a mother has to do all this work just to have a safe, sane childbirth experience. It shouldn't be that way.
Right.
And with all the unnecessary cesareans, it makes it so that when there's a necessary need for a cesarean birth, the access is limited by the overcrowding. So if we can decongest the hospitals, like in England, they decided to decongest the hospitals by supporting the midwives to do neighborhood care. And so you would do your prenatal care in a neighborhood home where the midwives had a practice. And then one of the midwives in your practice would do your birth at home, if that's what you wanted. And it decongests the hospitals. And let's talk about free birth, because this is a big controversy now.
Oh, let's talk about it.
So free birth it's being called free birth. It's when mothers have lost trust. Mothers-to-be have lost trust in the medical system, and they decide to go it alone at home without a skilled birth attendant. And well-trained doulas will not attend free births because they know the liability is great. You know, doulas are not medically trained. What if the mother hemorrhages? What if the mother needs someone to resuscitate her baby? Again, doulas are not medically trained. They're trained in continuous, compassionate, skilled support. And yeah, it's not fair to call a doula to your birth at home and not have a skilled midwife there in attendance. So, we're seeing it with people that are not Indonesians that live here in Bali, and they'll call our clinic at 3 a.m. and say, we just had a free birth and it's not well. The baby's not crying. And our midwives, two at a time, two midwives will jump on a motorcycle and get there as fast as they can. And if the baby's not breathing, there's no way they can get there on time. You know, I ask people planning a free birth to hold their breath for me for 1 minute. So you moms listening on the podcast, hold your breath for a minute. It's really hard to do. Yeah. And imagine a baby You know, neonatal resuscitation, I just got recertified again. And it's the most important skill. And it's no joke. It's an important skill. And of course, hospitals all have a neonatal resuscitation therapist on board on every shift, every day, every night. You know, all midwives are well trained in neonatal resuscitation. All of our qualified, certified professional midwives or nurse midwives or licensed midwives. So, you know, you deserve, and your baby deserves, a skilled caregiver beside them at birth. Doing it on your own, I've just heard too many stories from parents that it didn't work out. And so let's not do that. Let's give the support that mothers need, the access to support. Okay? So, yeah, getting a hold of a midwife, and your doulas know what midwives are going to help you plan the birth that is for you, that makes you feel safe. And the more trauma a mother has had in her life, the more trauma she's had, the more likely she is to need a birth plan that suits her. You know, where she feels like she's in charge and no one's going to hurt her. No one's going to take her baby away. No one's going to do a vaginal exam without permission. You know, that's not uncommon. You know, people in healthcare, I don't know why they can put their hand in a woman's vagina without clearing it with her first. I'm sorry to say this, it's very harsh, but someone putting their hand in your vagina without your permission is rape. It's rape. And so women are terrified of this. And women talk to each other and they have stories and they tell each other what happened to them. And if you have enough stories, I mean, my mom was so abused when she gave birth in military hospitals. And she didn't know that she could protest in any way. And for her ultimate form of protest was to raise a daughter that grew up to be a midwife that advocates for human rights in childbirth. And, you know, yesterday morning, my mom's 91. She walked down to the clinic and brought flowers to the mothers. There were 4 mothers postpartum, and brought flowers to the mothers and talked to them about their babies and encouraged them to breastfeed, because she was that breastfeeding experience was taken from her. She was given injections to dry up her milk in the 50s and 60s. And here she is, you know, a Filipino woman, and who was suddenly in America being told what to do. And none of it was culturally appropriate for her. Cultural safety is very important. I don't care what culture you come from. The book that I just started, honestly, yesterday, Nauli Vinaver, who's a Mexican midwife, is here. She's teaching Eat, Pray, Doula with us. We have doula trainings. By the way, Eat, Pray, Doula, we just opened registration for 2025. So if you just Google Eat, Pray, Doula, it's a beautiful way to increase your circle of support and to become a birth keeper. If you have a dream to be a doula, or you have a dream to be a midwife, you can start as a doula and then work your way through your education process. A lot of mothers don't want to go to midwifery school till their children are bigger. And I'm with you on that. But you want to be a birth keeper, and you can do so much. You can do so much for human rights in childbirth for mothers and babies and families by starting out as a doula. And maybe there are lots of people, their life career is a doula, and they are doing a beautiful service for humanity. But so Nauli Vinaver, the Mexican midwife, and Deborah Pascali Bonaro, who we know as the orgasmic birth midwife or doula, she's amazing. Have you interviewed her on your podcast?
Not yet, no.
I'll give you her contact. She's the one who has really helped New Jersey, New York, to get the insurance companies to support you having a doula paid for by your insurance. How cool is that?
She's based right here in New Jersey.
Yes, yeah. And you know, we have this joke that everything great comes from New Jersey. My husband's from New Jersey.
Oh, that's right.
love New Jersey. Oh my gosh. And we had like 3 doulas from New Jersey on our last course, but we had doulas representing, because many people represent several cultures or were born and raised in one country and then ended up in New Jersey. Anyway, so we had representatives of 23 different countries and nations.
Wow.
On the course we finished last week. And the advanced course will start this week. And Jenny Joseph, Time Magazine's Woman of the Year 2022, she'll be here. Jenny Joseph has done so much to advocate for access. Her work is called Common Sense Childbirth, easy to Google, and she's really been amazing. She's originally a British midwife who lives in Florida. So she has brought life to women in Florida women honestly are dying all over the United States because of lack of access to skilled care. And so we'll go back to the subject of free birth. When women are afraid that if they go to the hospital, they're going to be treated badly, they're going to be abused, or there won't be a cultural safety. And again, I don't care what color you are. You were all born homesick. So we started this book called Born Homesick, and it's going to be a collection of different people talking about their experiences in life. You know, Deborah Pascali Bonaro was raised in her grandmother was from Italy, and she was raised with her grandmother and her mother. And they told her about birth in the most glorious, wonderful way. And so her grandmother came from Italy and gave birth beautifully in New York before there was any access for her to have care in the hospital. A midwife came to her home, and she would say, you always labor leaning over the kitchen sink and dancing, and you dance with your midwife, and you dance with your mother, and you dance with your sisters. And back then the men would go out and smoke a cigarette probably. New York I'm a grandmother now, so yeah. Anyway, so all of us were born homesick, especially America's melting pot. So we're going to collect beautiful stories from all the homesick born people that I know and make those available. So yeah, just try to find a way to get your birth plan as you like, so you don't have to do something like try to give birth at home alone. Don't do it. I'm sorry, you deserve better. You and your baby deserve better. And there are all kinds of people online saying, oh, it was a great experience, it was wonderful, whatever. You know what? Your husband cannot suture your vagina if it tears. And if it has tiny tear, that's okay. But if you need to be sutured, you don't want to have to go to the hospital for that because you had your baby at home. You're disrupting your whole bonding process trying to get to the hospital to be sutured. You know? And if you just let it heal open, not going to be healthy. You know, you deserve better than that. You need to care for your health and your baby's well-being. So we need to advocate for hospitals to do the right thing. I mean, a hospital here in Bali came to our midwives at Bumi Sehat, and they called me up and they said, hey, come run over. I live 1 or 2 minute run from the Bumi Sehat clinic. And they said that the hospital at Family USADA wants to talk to you. And they had all their administrators there, and they said, how can we make sure that when you transport moms from here, which is very rare, only 2 to 3% of our moms transport from Bumi Sehat. So we have a super low cesarean rate. But we have midwives working with doulas and nurses, and we have a doctor on staff. And so we do collaborative care. And the hospital asks us how they can help. And I gave them copies of the placenta book. And I said, look, this is the nephew of one of your OBs and on the cover. And so they did agree to let delayed cord clamping and cutting even during cesarean birth happen. And not only that, they gave their OBs the option of not clamping and cutting the cord at all and letting the placenta stay attached to the baby until it naturally dries up and falls off, which takes anywhere from the shortest one I've seen is 2.5 days, but it could take 5 days. If you give the placenta a name, it's going to take 8 or 9 days to have that placenta.
It doesn't want to go anywhere.
That's a pain, that's a pain in the butt. Yeah, you do not give your placenta a name. I mean, whatever. You can love it and honor it, but I'm telling you. But it placentas need to be honored, and lotus birth is not for everyone. But when the baby's born and the delay is happening, the cord is not being messed with, the baby's now being hugged, being breastfed, skin to skin with mother, and then the placenta will be born. It takes anywhere for 15 minutes on to, could be almost an hour. By the time it's taking an hour, your midwives are having kittens because they're worried. But, your placenta is born, and then it goes in a stainless steel bowl beside the mother and baby. And we put flowers there in the bowl. But that's already a lotus birth. If you see the baby umbilical cord and placenta all connected still, that's already a lotus birth. And however long you wait after that, whether it's 15 minutes or 5 days, that's still a lotus birth. Now, a full lotus birth is when you wash the placenta off, you hold baby and someone else takes placenta, baby all connected over, washes off the blood, dries it, pats it dry, and packs it in salt, puts it in cotton toweling and puts it in a basket. That's already a full lotus birth. And then you can wait as long as you want. My daughter-in-law, Weena, who's an incredible prenatal yoga instructor. She runs our prenatal yoga program here. And when you come to Eat, Pray, Doula, she's your yoga teacher every morning. Weena decided not to clamp and cut her baby's cord, both of her sons. And by the 3rd day, 2.5 days, my son came to my bedroom and said, "Mom, I'm so over the piece of meat stuck on my baby." And I just asked my son, I said, "Okay, who's the boss?" And he goes, "You're right. My wife is the boss. You taught me well." Taught my sons well. And he said, "Okay, I'm not going to complain about this." I said, it's really just a blip in time.
Right.
I mean, Odie's 7, she's turning 17. So it is a blip in time.
Right.
And so we just, we want our babies to have whatever it is that they're telling their mothers they need. And so later that day, so it's only 2.5 days after the birth. This is the fastest one I've ever seen. My daughter-in-law starts yelling, and she lived at that time. They hadn't had their own house yet. They were still upstairs from us. My daughter-in-law starts yelling, Mom, Ibu, come up, Ibu. And I run up the stairs, and I see my grandson Bodhi has pulled his umbilical cord off. It's dried. It's still connected to the placenta. He's pulled it off, and he's handing it to my son. He's like this, handing it to my son. And my daughter-in-law is crying. And she said, "Your son bad vibed the placenta." And he looked at me, he said, "Did you say anything to her? Because I didn't." I said, "No, I didn't tell her that you wanted it off, but your son knew, your baby knew." And
he ripped it off.
It was hanging by a thread, and he popped it off. It wasn't bleeding. There was no. And I said, "Well, obviously Bodhi was ready." And she said, "But I wasn't ready. I'm not ready for that placenta to be disconnected." And my son said the most beautiful thing. He said, "That's okay. We're going to sleep right here with this placenta here beside us in the bed until you're ready." And not only that, but my co-grandmother, my Javanese, the mother of my daughter-in-law, Ibu Titi, who's Javanese, she was crying. She said, "We weren't ready." And of course, when she first saw that her grandson and his umbilical cord and placenta were still connected, she thought I was crazy. She said, "Don't you need to cut that off? I mean, isn't that going to infect the baby?" You will not infect the baby. By not clamping and cutting the cord. What infects the baby is unclean clamping and cutting. If you cut with scissors that are a bit rusty, you can give the baby tetanus toxoid. That's why mothers in pregnancy, we make sure they've had a tetanus injection in the last 10 years. Clamping and cutting the umbilical cord is a sterile procedure because it's dangerous. Not clamping the cutting is not a way to infect your baby. Don't worry. It won't infect your baby. So far, we've seen no research to that effect. And believe me, I'm constantly looking for the research. So anyway, the next morning, my son came downstairs with the placenta in the bowl, and he goes, "Well, I'm so glad. My wife is happy to have it buried now. She's over it too. She feels ready." Yeah. So we planted a Bodhi tree. And
it's beautiful.
Yeah. So in any way. And again, we need to reinvent our own feeling of cultural safety as mothers. So, and I'm talking to all of you, not just to Dr. Laura. We all have had traumas. We all have lived as modern people in this day and age in the absence of the sacred. But it's really, I know more than anything, the same thing that Amachi said way back in the 90s, the beautiful female saint from India. She said that it's from the heart of the mother that we're going to save this planet. And that the heart of the mother, the love in the heart of mothers has to rise in every human being, regardless of their gender. And as mothers, you're teaching the world this. And if you think that your job isn't important, think again, because you are creating world peace with your baby in your arms and your baby at your breast. You are world peace executives. And the generation that we're raising now are going to be the stewards of our earth and our air and our water and the fire and the spirit. I mean, those are the stewards of the earth that are going to save our planet, those babies in your arms. My generation failed you, and I'm sorry. I'm really trying still. I'm not going to stop until my last breath. But, you know, we are living in a planet of crisis. There's no planet B. There's no music or chocolate on a dead planet. So it's up to the mothers. And as you live as a mother, the example that you set raises the bar for everyone. Because without the motherly love in the heart of every human being, regardless of gender, our planet doesn't have a chance. So it's really, really the mothers that are saving the world. And it's no joke. It's a big responsibility, moms. It really is. So should we talk about fathers for a minute?
Okay, 1 minute, and we probably have to wrap up.
Yeah, we do have to wrap. We're way over an hour. Fathers, you have a beautiful, big responsibility. Not only fathers, but partners of mothers having babies. And so what we tell the partners is prepare something for the birth, because we know that at the end of our lives, each and every one of us will remember all of the key moments in our life. Our life will pass before us. As our pineal gland opens and we leave this world, we'll have this beautiful experience of remembering our entire lifetime, going back to our birth. And so what happens at each baby's birth is very important, because they relive that at the end of their life. Okay? What we hear is so important, because hearing is so sensitive in newborn babies. And remember that the mother's voice is familiar to the baby, but it's from the mouth down to her womb. It's quite a distance. Baby's head down usually, and babies are listening. And so when the papa or the mother's partner is talking to the baby, that person is talking right here, down here where the baby can hear really well. And so the baby really knows your voice. So what you say at the birth will be remembered by the baby. It will put their feet on a path for this life, but will be remembered by the baby at the end of this life, and puts their feet on a beautiful path for the next life. So prepare something beautiful to say to your baby for this life and for their next life. Okay? And no pressure, but it's important.
I was like, that's a big job.
Fathers rise to the occasion. So... yeah, and like, I don't know what my youngest son, I don't know what my husband said. And I asked him, and he says, that's our secret. I kind of do think that it was something about music being the same as God and love, or something like that, because that kid has perfect pitch. I couldn't hold a tune to save my soul, but when I was pregnant with him, I could sing. So mothers, yeah, babies have a profound effect on you. You know, they alter your DNA for the rest of your life, down to your stem cells. So really enjoy that. Enjoy that fact.
Yeah.
Mothers, your job is so big. It's so big. And no pressure, but just do it one day at a time, and know that your baby, holding that baby, being a mother, it's the most important job on earth. You know, we can't express in words your value, but it's really true.
Well said. IBU Robin, this was a pleasure. I'm so glad we got some good internet for the last part of this. And I could hear everything you had to say. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for the work you do and for supporting mothers all over the world.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode with the beautiful IBU Robin. We went on a little bit of a roller coaster ride all over with various topics, but all of it shared with such passion and fervor and a strong belief that the more that we love, the more we can serve, the more we can shift and elevate the global community. So once again, such an honor to have the opportunity to interview IBU ROBIN LIM. And I do hope you enjoyed the episode despite some of the technical issues that we had with the recording. I think a lot of great value still came through, and I'm very grateful for her time to connect with me. If you want to learn more about her or how you can contribute to her nonprofit, you can check out her website at iburobin.com. That's IBUROBIN.com to learn how you can help with her nonprofit or her latest passion with the period underwear for the girls in need in Indonesia. Thank you.